Hong Kong is one of the most discussed jurisdictions when people want to go and form their company offshore. But what I found is that a lot of people have misconceptions about what Hong Kong is and exactly how it works. And like any offshore jurisdiction, there are certain people for whom it will work and others for whom it is not so useful. In this video, we're going to go over the pros and cons of incorporating your business in Hong Kong. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. One of the most important things you can do when you're going offshore is choosing the right place to incorporate your business. I've seen so many people who have gone the cheap and easy way, incorporated on some fly-speck island, and just said, hey, what's the difference? They're all the same, only to have a lot of operational problems in years to come, only to spend time chasing down that latest bank or trying to get their money out of somewhere, okay? So the interesting thing about Hong Kong is that Hong Kong isn't really even an offshore jurisdiction at all. One thing that I've said a number of times is onshore is the new offshore. And so for that reason, Hong Kong is a rather interesting place to form a company because it is not the British Virgin Islands. It is not Belize. It is not a place that everyone knows, okay, that's where people go where they just don't want to pay any tax. There are a couple of things that I think increasingly are becoming an issue, operationally speaking. I'm not saying they may be a tax issue. You could still probably just get away with these things. But number one, the world is moving away from people who pay absolutely no tax. And even more so, people who have the vulgarity, quote unquote, of paying zero tax. So if you go to the British Virgin Islands, there are going to be certain ways that people look at that. Your customers may look at that and not like it, or they may not care. Banks may look at it and they may or may not care. So Hong Kong deals with that relatively well because Hong Kong is not a tiny island that has 3 people living there and 13 million companies formed, okay? It's a real place. There are real people. And it's a place where you could certainly go and you could form a company and get a residence permit and live there, okay? Now you're not going to do that and have a great tax situation. Their taxes are probably lower than where you live, but you're not going to get the full juice out of Hong Kong. Now, that's one benefit, okay, is that it is a real country. I think that increasingly that's important, okay? Every year it is on all the best places to do business lists, often in the top 5. Things are pretty straightforward. The government really encourages business to come there. And it's just a jurisdiction that was built for, especially trading. Okay, if you go back in the days, particularly when the British were there, it was a place that you would receive goods from somewhere else in Asia, such as China. They would come through Hong Kong and they would go somewhere else. They'd go to Europe. It's a trading jurisdiction. And so because of that, and perhaps because of the British influence, it is widely recognized as a very stable place. It's also a foreigner-friendly place in that it's one of only a few places in Asia where you can go as a foreigner and you can own 100% of your company. You can be your own director. You don't need to bring other people in. And so that's very interesting to people. What's also interesting is this dual tax system. Now, it's interesting because we recently saw in Barbados, okay, an island that has, I would say, less economic clout than Hong Kong, but Barbados was recently pushed into unifying its dual tax system. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Hong Kong. I don't know that the two are really that similar. But Hong Kong has a system where profits that are derived from outside of Hong Kong are ostensibly tax-free, whereas Hong Kong itself, i.e. people who live there, Hong Kong residents, people doing business within Hong Kong, are taxed under a local tax system where the first couple hundred grand is 8.25%, and then above that, 16.5%. And you can take deductions. Deductions are probably more liberal than they would be certainly in a place like the United States. I always like to run a business cleanly. I don't want to be running my suits or my child's diapers through the company. But certainly Hong Kong is more flexible in things like meals, entertainment, stuff like that. To that point, sidebar, what people don't necessarily understand is that if you're a U.S. citizen, the U.S. wants to know what's going on, and so you're going to have an extra set of restrictions imposed on you about things that you can deduct. But Hong Kong, in and of itself, in a vacuum, pretty flexible tax system. People like the idea of 0% tax, but it is not the same as a traditional offshore jurisdiction where there's just no tax. Okay. So now we get into some of the challenges and even the cons about Hong Kong. This is where the misconception comes in, because you can claim that you're going to pay 0% tax in Hong Kong, and that's possible. But I see a lot of people doing sloppy things that are going to potentially get them to lose their offshore status, okay? One thing about Hong Kong is you need to be organized. Now, I talked about in a separate video, how do you reduce offshore paperwork? How do you keep things easy, okay? Hong Kong is a jurisdiction that has some paperwork. You're going to be doing paperwork, but you're getting the benefit of having that more legitimate jurisdiction. So if you don't set things up properly, you might not know it for a couple of years, but you might be on the hook for tax, okay? This is not a jurisdiction where you just show up, keep no books, keep no records, do whatever the heck you want, and are guaranteed to have no tax. And the challenge here is that it's usually going to be 3 years before they come back and look at you. And so you might have a bunch of profits. Once your annual audits are done, they're done, okay? And so it's not like in a country like the United States where you can go back and say, oh, I made a mistake, let me amend that. You really need to be on the ball, and you not only need the people to help you file the stuff, but you need a strategy to make sure that if you're going to be overseas, that you're following the various criteria for legitimately being offshore. Especially if you have an e-commerce business or a business where you're not doing face-to-face or person-to-person business, it's important to make sure you have protocols in place to have a Hong Kong tax-friendly business, okay? The other challenge is paperwork. Now, personally, here at Nomad Capitalist, we talk to the 6- and 7-figure entrepreneur. For that person, I don't think the paperwork is a challenge. If you go on various internet forums, you'll see people complaining about the paperwork. It's so expensive. It's a couple grand, okay? Even if your business makes $100,000 in profit, you're going to save tenfold, at least, and just the operational tax in your home country versus like what it costs to operate in Hong Kong. So if you don't have $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 to handle an audit, then yeah, Hong Kong may not be for you. But there is paperwork involved, and again, you need to be organized. So you need your ecosystem of bookkeeper, you need someone who's good on the ground to handle things. And what I found the biggest issue is pushing people to get the job done, because I don't want my audit process lingering over me. I don't want the auditor hanging around like a pet. I want to get the audit done, I want to get it out, okay? And sometimes that can be challenging, okay? Now the other challenge in Hong Kong is that while it is very well respected, if you need things like tax treaties, you may not always have those, okay? So countries in the developed high-tax world understand what happens in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's a territorial tax system, and so because Hong Kong doesn't tax foreign income, they often don't have treaties. They often don't have that tax infrastructure to help you. And so if you need to rely on a treaty, then that could potentially be a problem. The other issue is, depending on where you want to live, Hong Kong may actually still be on a blacklist. So the European Union, for example, there's a blacklist of jurisdictions where they don't want you to operate, or they're going to penalize you for doing that. So a lot of people think, oh, great, I'll move to one of these EU countries, have my Hong Kong company. It's not necessarily going to work, because certain places where you may want to live or be resident or be tax resident or try and get your citizenship, it's not going to play nice with a place like Hong Kong, because they're going to say, well, you're not paying any tax there, or there's not a treaty to help you, so therefore we don't recognize that, so now we're going to apply a penalty rate. You can actually be much worse off forming your company there, depending on where you want to live. So as always, the factors depend on your unique situation. Hong Kong is a great place, but the biggest challenge people have had is banking. Okay. Now, again, I come from the perspective of the 6- or 7-figure entrepreneur, people who are making pretty substantial profits in their business. And if you have substantial profits, you probably have a decent amount of infrastructure. You probably have employees and contractors, and you have money coming in, money coming out. You've got a lot going on. And so the answer for smaller businesses in recent years has been just go to one of the fintech companies in Hong Kong, get an account with them, and just park your money there. I think most people I talk to who have hundreds of thousands of dollars in liquidity, or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars coming through every month, don't really feel comfortable having this kind of segregated sub-account that's not really a bank account, it's tied into a fintech company. It's a great solution for parking 10 grand. But it's not really a great solution for operating a robust business. A lot of the fintech companies, for example, won't let you send money to many parts of the world. My R&D team and I were recently talking to some folks in Latin America, and we wanted to send them some money to do some projects for us. I think most of the Hong Kong fintechs won't let you send money there. So you're restricted. If you have freelancers in certain parts of the world, you may be restricted in sending money to them. There's certain restrictions on you can receive money only from other companies. So if you're doing business with people, you may have a problem, okay? So the fintechs aren't really that robust. It's very hard these days, even for us. Even with a list of 800 plus banks that we deal with, it's really a case-by-case basis for which bank in Hong Kong would take a particular person. Unless you live there, and even sometimes if you do, a lot of the Hong Kong banks don't really want to deal with you. HSBC Hong Kong, for example, I shudder to think that there are so many people who form companies in Hong Kong who are still telling their clients that just go to HSBC, we'll introduce you. It doesn't work. So banking is the real issue. Now, you don't have to bank in Hong Kong, right? But how are you receiving your money? Stripe is in Hong Kong, but they really prefer people who are residents. So the offshore thing can be tough. Okay, PayPal's in Hong Kong, but the fees are higher and there's more restrictions, and you have to dump it into a Hong Kong account. So the biggest challenge right now in Hong Kong is if you're running a robust business where you charge a decent price for your services, or you do a decent amount of volume, or you do business with certain type of people, or you're sending money or receiving money from certain parts of the world, or so many other factors, getting the whole banking piece plus merchant account piece plus deposits and moving money and paying yourself, it becomes a real challenge. So it's a challenge that can be solved if you know what you're doing, but it's something that to me, the idea of just forming a company in Hong Kong for $1 plus government fees doesn't really work anymore. It worked 5 years ago. It doesn't work now. And so Hong Kong is definitely a jurisdiction where you have to be paying attention. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. I would never say that any solution is the right thing for anyone because that's not the case. Everyone has different needs, but it's something that you have to be on the ball. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist. I wrote this book, which you can find on Amazon, to distill a lot of the stuff we talk about in these videos and a lot of the stuff I've learned over the last decade plus traveling all around the world, teaching you about how to legally reduce your taxes, build your personal freedom, and create wealth faster. Definitely get a copy of this book if you want to learn more. Now, if you want to watch more videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and make sure you click the notifications bell so you never miss one of our new videos with more tips on how to go where you're treated best. And if you're already a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur and you'd like to put these strategies in place for yourself, go to nomadcapitalist.com and learn about how I can help you.